Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Tom Brokaw, NBC News in New York, and here is the latest situation as we now know it on the island of Grenada, which is a tiny island, as you know, in the southern Caribbean. It has been invaded by a multinational force, as it's being described. The bulk of that force, about 1,800 American troops, that includes Marines and apparently airborne troops as well, and about 300 troops from some islands around Grenada. They were sent there by President Reagan from Barbados early this morning, he says, at the request of the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States.
Hi, thanks for joining me today for a new discussion covering Operation Urgent Fury Grenada, which was a U.S. operation conducted from October 25th, 1983 through November 2nd, 1983. This short 8-day conflict came at the height of the Cold War and on the heels of the Iranian Hostage Crisis. It was conducted entirely on the eastern Caribbean island nation of Grenada, located approximately 100 miles north of Venezuela. Grenada was under British rule from 1763 until 1974, when it finally gained its independence from Britain. Grenada then joined the Commonwealth of Nations, an English-speaking commonwealth of mostly ex-British colonies. In 1979, a Marxist movement overthrew the government in a coup d'etat and established the People's Revolutionary Government, or the PRG, which was headed by Maurice Bishop as Prime Minister. In September of 1983, an internal power struggle emerged, and Bishop was pushed out of office, detained, and eventually killed by the Marxist People's Revolutionary Army. This killing of Grenada's president brought about unrest throughout the small island nation, and other Caribbean states took notice, as did the United States. The Reagan administration was principally concerned over the fact that more than 600 medical students were in attendance at St. George's University. The main campus was on the island, just located south of Salinas Airport, on the southernmost tip of Grenada. Driven by the recent Iranian hostage crisis, the U.S. moved quickly. Reagan did not want another international incident, and I feel that he genuinely cared for the students and wanted to see to their safe evacuation. Operation Urgent Fury was very controversial, though, as many felt that the U.S. only wanted to get rid of the coup leader, Hudson Austin, and prevent the spread of communist ideologies throughout the Caribbean. To this day, many feel that the Reagan administration used the students as a pretext for this invasion. The U.S. moved so swiftly that they also failed to consult Britain, their greatest ally and host of the Commonwealth. Margaret Thatcher was actually upset with President Reagan for a brief period, but she still supported his decision publicly. The U.S. invading force consisted of more than 7,000 troops and involved the deployment of an entire carrier strike group, including an amphibious assault vessel, USS Saipan. The Army would provide the bulk of the fighting force with the 75th Ranger Regiment and paratroopers from the 82nd Airborne Division, 2 U.S. Marine Corps battalions, and America's elite fighting forces, both U.S. Army Delta and Navy SEALs, participated in Operation Urgent Fury. The operation was kicked off by the U.S. Army Rangers. 2 companies of the 75th Ranger Regiment departed Fort Stewart, Georgia at midnight on October 24, 1983 in C-130s. They would jump into Port Salinas Airport at 05:30 on the morning of October 25th with the mission of securing the airfield in order to allow friendly aircraft to land. They would then immediately move southeast to the nearby St. George's University to secure the safety of the U.S. medical students that were supposedly unable to move from their campus. The Rangers encountered more resistance than they were expecting, as enemy intelligence reporting was lacking a great amount of detail. There were Cuban construction workers and soldiers at the airport that were working to expand the runway length to 9,000 feet. That way it could accommodate the larger cargo aircraft. The Cubans aggressively defended the airport using BTR-60 armored personnel carriers, but were eventually outmaneuvered by the Rangers. The Rangers were landing on the south side of the runway, which was their drop zone, but some landed on the north side of the runway and were cut off from the main element. In a moment of improvisation, it's noteworthy that the Rangers used a bulldozer as a makeshift covering vehicle to transport soldiers across the runway as they took cover behind the blade of the dozer. By 10 o'clock on the morning of the 25th, the runway and airport were both secure, and the Rangers moved on to their next objective, which was St. George's University, which is also known as the True Blue Campus. The entire operation was rushed, and because of this, the Rangers jumped in unprepared. Intelligence failures and joint coordination failures plagued this operation early on. Most notably were the lack of maps. Put yourself in 1983. There is no GPS, making maps the most critical planning tool and absolutely essential for navigation on the ground at the tactical level. The Rangers were using free handout tourist maps that were 5 years old. I'm not making this up. Upon arrival at SGU, or commonly referred to as the True Blue Campus, the Rangers did rescue and evacuate the students, but they came to find that of the 600 students on the island, only 140 were located at this campus next to the airfield. They learned that there were other campuses and that the majority of the students were at the Grand Anse campus, which was a few miles away. This is important intelligence that they should have been briefed on prior to this operation. Many of these failures were attributed to a lack of joint coordination and planning, which would lead to joint operational reform through the 1986 Goldwater-Nichols Department of Defense Reorganization Act. Subsequent reports would refer to confused objectives, unclear responsibilities, inadequate command and control, and poor translation of political goals to military objectives. Meanwhile, up north at Pearls Airport in Grenville, 2 Marine rifle companies of the 22nd Marine Amphibious Unit, 2nd Battalion, 8th Marine Regiment, were tasked to seize and secure Pearls Airport and proceed south to Grenville. The Marines were brought in with CH-46 Sea Knight helicopters from the USS Guam. The Sea Knights were escorted by AH-1 Cobra gunships. In a complete dichotomy from the Rangers' experience down south, the Marines encountered very minimal resistance from Grenadian defenders at the airport and were actually welcomed by local Grenadians at Grenville. The airport was secured by 6:30 a.m. on the morning of the 25th of October. With the area secured, Marine AH-1 Cobra gunships were dispatched south to provide close air support to the Rangers and the 82nd Airborne paratroopers. In an engagement at Fort Frederick, 1 AH-1 gunship was shot down, and although both the pilot and gunner survived the crash, the gunner, Captain Jeb Siegel, died when Grenadian troops closed on the downed gunship and killed Captain Siegel. He was posthumously awarded the Navy Cross. The pilot, Captain Timothy Howard, escaped and managed to survive. A second Marine gunship was shot down, and both the pilot, Major John Gugeri, and the gunner, First Lieutenant Jeff Sharper, died after crashing into the ocean. Both were posthumously awarded the Silver Star. Marine Air Support continued to support operations in the south and was extended to support both Delta and Navy SEAL special operations that were being conducted simultaneously. Shortly after the gunships were downed, a UH-60 Army Black Hawk was also shot down near Fort Frederick. In addition to the gunship casts, fixed-wing close air support was provided to all ground forces from U.S. Navy A-7 Corsairs. And in a tragic mistake, A-7 pilots that were targeting anti-aircraft guns near Fort Frederick hit a nearby hospital, killing 18 civilians. Day 1 of Operation Urgent Fury had gone from bad to worse. Overall, some ground was seized, 2 airstrips secured, and 140 students were rescued. But Day 1 had certainly left its mark on the soldiers, Marines, civilians, and by now the international community. That will conclude this quick review and analysis of Day 1 of Operation Urgent Fury Grenada. Please join me for Day 2, where I'll discuss the second rescue mission of SGU students at the Grand Anse campus and cover adversary force composition. Thanks for watching. See you next time.
So we're real glad you guys came.
Oh, you bet. Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bring us one up.